the May 8th, 2025 meeting of the Financial Advisory Commission. I am acting as chair in the absence of Chair Fred Sussman. This morning we have from the commission, myself, Jim Cardillo, Patrick Bannon, Joe Rubino, Frank Brown, Ed Meehan. From the city of Annapolis, we have Alderman Arnett, we have Bianca Smith, we have Brittany Moran, we have Mr. Lyles from the Office of Law, Kat Valiente from the Finance Department, and from the acting city manager, Vicki Buckland. In case I missed anybody, please let me know.
You did.
Jake will be joining. He's running a few minutes late, but he will be joining too. He's the budget manager.
And great. We will have Jake join us as well at the appropriate time. First item on the agenda is to please approve the agenda as recently submitted. I hope the commission members have had a chance to review the agenda. And if so, I'll entertain a motion to approve it or amend it.
I so move that the agenda be accepted as submitted.
Thank you, Frank.
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the agenda is approved. The next item of business is the minutes from the April 10th meeting. I would entertain a motion for amendments or approval.
Move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Joe Rubino,
I'll second.
seconded by Frank Brown. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Next item are departmental reports. We'll start with the Finance Department.
Okay, so we just are, going through the budget and it's been consuming our lives. So we will talk about the budget, I think, a little bit later in the meeting, so we can kind of get an idea where we are. We have met with council and the finance committee all week last week. So just working through that. We are in talks with Davenport about a potential bond sale in the fall. We are still hiring for a couple positions in our department and trying to get our hands around what our needs are and our resource situation and the workload, and just that's kind of where we are. But we're budget heavy right now.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Peter Vale from the Financial Advisory Commission has joined us, and Jake Trudeau from the Finance Office has also joined us. Thank you. On the city manager report, Vicki, is there anything to report now?
No, just to note that today is sort of the official first day. Yesterday was technically Mike's last day, and so you're stuck with me for the duration. And obviously, what that means is that my set of duties and where my attention is shifts. That's something I'm still working on. With this group and with the audit committee, we'd had various conversations about some things I'd been working on. Obviously, some of that stuff shifts. So still working on where exactly my attention is most needed right now. So.
Well, great. Thank you, Vicki. I'm sure the Battlefield Commission will work out well. I look forward to working with you. The next report is the audit committee. I'll give the audit committee report, and I'll also ask Alderman Arnett to participate on this. The audit committee last met on April 21st. The major part of the meeting was the presentation of the ACFR and the financial statements from the city's auditors, UHY. It was an unmodified opinion, excuse me, and everything was. They were very happy with the way that the audit went, with the exception of one matter that rose to a formal communication with regards to delays during the audit. They indicated that the city, I'm going to read what the recommendation says. We suggest that those charged with governance consider opportunities to enhance staffing levels and document procedures within the finance function. I think what the auditors were seeing was the turnover during the audit fieldwork impacted them to the point where they did experience some delays. So that's the extent of the audit committee report. Ross, if you have anything to add from there.
Now, I agree that with the alert from the outside auditors, and this has been a chronic problem ever since the 18 years I've been on the council. And I have to urge the finance department to make sure that they're asking the city council for the staff and support they need to address this. It's a pretty vital function. So, and I think the council will be supportive.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and the first item there is the spending affordability legislation, the status of the draft ordinance. Chair Sussman and I had given some recommended revisions to Alderman Arnett, and I don't know the status of when it was last submitted or what the status is within the council.
I will report that I've been working with Cynthia Reuter on this, and I think we have been responsive to all of the comments. There's one that keeps reappearing where Mr. Sussman wants to refer to the mayor, and I insist that we refer to the city administration and city council. The mayor is part of the council, but the scope is broader than just the mayor. And in fact, the mayor quite often is well above and removed from these kinds of things. But other than that, I think we have accepted every one of the changes, and it's ready to be submitted to the council for first reader.
If I may jump in just briefly. So the staff and staffing impact reports are in for that one. I will give you guys just a preview of what they say. What I ended up writing in there was a recommendation to simplify it a little bit. There's a lot of detail in there, and some of that data is readily available. Other parts of that data potentially less so at the city level. And at any rate, over time, the particular events and circumstances that drive the city's financial position, there are a few constants in there, but there are some ebbs and flows as well. And so the two kind of recommendations in there, one about this content, about having some broad categories of things that report should address, but giving yourselves essentially a little bit more flexibility to judge what's relevant in any particular year. And the second recommendation then is really about timing. The timing that's in the legislation now talks about that report essentially coinciding with, it has to be available by the time the mayor's budget is submitted to council, but that's too late for those recommendations to be part of the decision-making for the mayor's budget. We made a recommendation of having the report earlier in like January, just to fit with that decision-making timeline a little bit better. At the end of the day, obviously, council will, will consider, make their own, make their own assessment. But I just wanted you guys to know that's what you're going to see in the staff report.
And Mr. Chair,
Please go ahead.
the piece of legislation you reference is on first reader for Monday.
First reader.
Good.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Vicky, a question. Can you put up the first reader that's being submitted with the staff revisions?
So we did not, as a staff report, we don't make revisions. It's just, it's essentially just commentary, and then council can do with that as they will.
Okay. Is the fiscal impact note prepared?
I don't know. I have to oversee the staff report and staffing impact. I believe this fiscal impact is going in this morning, and those will be available online. Cynthia's very quick at posting them.
Thanks. I think Jake had something on the fiscal impact.
I think he was right. It'll go in this morning.
Great. Thank you.
Can
Vicky,
I
a question.
add a little to that, please, Jim?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so at the last track meeting, I felt kind of a little flummoxed, I guess is the right word, because there was a report from Ms. Dickinson that Resi was reticent. How's that for alliteration? Didn't think they had value added. I think they do, but in the meantime, I have been researching other options, including Sage Policy Group, KPMG, the Bacon Group from the University of Maryland, Mary Burkholder, and I don't know exactly what Mr. Trudeau is putting in the fiscal impact note, but I don't have a good sense. With Resi, it was going to be very little additional effort on their part, which makes sense to me because they may have to look a little more closely at the real estate market in the city as opposed to the county. But I think we all moved pretty much in lockstep. So it was more a matter of reapportioning the sources of funds. If we, and I am going to try to talk to Resi and get a better sense of what they're saying. Resi makes sense because that's what the state and the county use, and it would seem like it would be a very smart piggyback. Resi makes sense to me because it's actually a consortium of several different consulting groups, including some of the ones I just mentioned, that provide their forecasts and they come up with a consensus. But I am frustrated, but this has been a long time passion of mine to get this facility available to the city and the finance department. And so I'm going to be slogging away, and hopefully we'll have a better sense of other alternatives if we need that before this goes to committee, which I guess it'll go after first reader to the finance committee.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. Vicky, a question. When you say that you'd like the timeline changed to January for the delivery of the report, would this mean that implementation of this function would not be applicable until the 26-27 year?
Correct. That if this, I mean, obviously, I don't know what the timeline is to depend. I think some of that depends on what Alderman Arnett finds. But correct. I mean, the mayor's budget's already released, right? So
right.
That's that particular ship has sailed.
Right.
But that would make it in time for the next year's budget deliberations.
So the delivery of service would be during the 25-26 year with a report that would that would provide additional color on the budget for the 26-27 year.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other items of discussion on the consultant status on spending affordability? Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Please go ahead, Mike.
I did email you the bill.
Thank you very much. I will circulate that to the commission at the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Lyles. Anything else on the spending affordability legislation? Thank you. Then I want to move on to the budget presentation. And at this point, am I turning it over to Brittany or Vicky?
I can take that. And I believe, I don't know if you can pull up the presentation, if your screen is shared, or Kat, can you pull up the presentation?
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Great, thank you.
Kat. Thank you.
Can you all see my screen?
No,
Nope.
There we go. We're up.
on page 3 already.
Oh, sorry, I was looking through it.
We could start right there, actually.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys were sent, I believe, this presentation. If not, we can distribute it. But this was what we had presented to council as a brief overview, not that brief, an overview of the FY26 budget, mayor's proposed budget, with kind of some highlights of FY25, 24, and kind of what we're looking at for 26. So I'm going to go through this high level. You can obviously read all of the details. If you have any questions, we're here to answer them. But here we go. Okay, so for FY25, this is projected closeout. We are approximating about a $6 million surplus. And I just want to add that about $4 million of that is due to vacancies, which is 71%. But you can see there's a variety of departments that savings is in, as well as a little bit of an increase or a revenue projected overage of nearly $1 million. Next slide, Kat. Okay, and then just high level, we are looking at a growth in property tax of about 4.5 million and an overall increase of 5.6 million over the projected FY25 as we're looking at it right now. Additionally, I wanted to add that at the projected close of FY25, we're looking at good fund balance in all of our reserve accounts. And you will see later in the presentation where we stand with the fund balances and the amounts that were used in the FY26 budget. And no property tax increase. So this is the fund balance chart that I was speaking on, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. This shows the closeout of 24 as the audit stands, and then the projected FY25 and the transfers that we are projecting for 25, and then also the usage of the fund balances in 26, and then the end result of where we would be at the end of 26 if we were to pass the budget as is. Okay, and for FY26, some of the assumptions that were used, you can read through these, but just a variety of changes in the revenue. We are projecting or budgeting for a decrease in income taxes, and that is just based on what we're seeing, the actuals, unfortunately. We have included the 20% projected decrease in closing of City Dock, and then also we have an increase in some of our permits and licensing fees in a variety of departments, and we're looking at the second year of the 3-year assessment for property values. Some of our challenges that we're seeing right now, the volatility of interest rates, potential downward of interest rates that we've in the last couple of years seen very high interest rates, and that's been a large source of revenue for us. The other concern is the property taxes. 61% of our revenue is property taxes, and with some of the unknowns projected forward, it's just a topic of conversation, I believe. Again, the City Dock closure, the decrease in income taxes that we're seeing, and the overall question of the transportation fund and the usage of fund balance and the sustainability of that. So as I mentioned, income tax, this is just the linear relationship that we were looking at and the way that we projected for 26. As you can see, it's not very consistent. So there was a lot of factors to consider, but you'll see the downward turn in the years that we're in right now. And that could be for a number of reasons, but we've conservatively used what we're seeing in the current fiscal year as our basis. Okay, and then this is just the general fund expenditures by category. It's just the change from 24 actuals, what our projections are for 25, and then our categories as they are in the proposed budget. This is just a chart of the breakdown, the percentage-wise of our expenditures, you can see that most of our expenditures are salaries and benefits, about 67%. Okay, and FY 26.
Sorry,
Yes.
Brittany, quick question on the pie chart.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you continue. I just wanted to ask one question that came up in a discussion.
Yes.
The interfund transfers of 4.3%, what comprises the interfund transfers?
That is the transfers to the capital, the PAYGO piece.
Got it. All right.
And then also the debt service for the fleet replacement fund.
Got it. All right, thanks. Continue.
Okay, and all of this I've kind of already touched on. I do want to just add that inflation and competition for jobs is something that we're experiencing as a challenge. We have a lot of vacancies, as you've probably picked up on. So it's challenging our departments, and kind of the lack of resources, or just the bandwidth of the departments. But it is making it harder to hire. There was a class and comp study, which has been reflected in the budget, and that should help. But we have to continue keeping up with, competition in the job market in order to retain and attract those technical skills that we're needing right now. And that inflation of that 67% of our budget is also making it a little bit more challenging for the inflation on the non-personnel expenses as well. Additionally, we had a 9% increase in healthcare premiums, and that was employer and employee.
Thanks. I want to recognize Joe. Joe Rubino has a question.
Yeah, just so, Brittany, you were mentioning the vacancies. So it sounds like that's an unusual spike. Don't you have a natural lapse rate and turnover with the city? And I'm thinking with from our standpoint, the Naval Academy, with the federal employees and what's happened in the federal government, we're getting inundated with applications for any vacancies we do have. Do you think that'll change, or I'm just wondering what the historic context is of the vacancies?
My hope is yes, and Vicki might want to jump into this too. With the class and comp study, that should help as well. We have a number of things, initiatives, like, for example, police department. They had a program where they were able to offer sign-on bonuses, contingent upon how many years they stay on. I know in some, it varies by department. So unfortunately, in the FY25, we're looking at approximately $4 million savings just from vacancies. And that is across citywide, but more heavily in police. That's probably our largest chunk. We hope that people will be hired. I know council has been trying to take a look at what our positions are and why they're vacant, and if we should still have them. And so it's definitely a topic of conversation. We would like to not have as much turnover or vacant positions. It adds a lot of stress on the employees we have. I know in finance, particularly, since it was brought up in the audit as well, we do have a few resumes that are coming through. It's a very technical department, and we're finding that it's a little bit challenging to attract the technical skill that we need to fill those positions. So I can't speak for all the departments, but that's kind of my general analysis.
And I'll jump in a little bit. The vacancies in the police department are, we do take a turnover savings as part of the budgeting process, because some of that is a little bit more steady. Policing, as you can, I'm sure appreciate, is a challenge kind of everywhere. It's a tough job, even in the best of times. And it's particularly challenging now. So police department has been very active at working to fill those vacancies, and has been trying out a variety of things with some success, not as much as they would hope, I know, but they continue to try. The other thing that drove vacancies savings this particular year in FY25 was that the results of the class and comp study came out later than we had hoped they would, which meant that a number of the new positions that had been funded for FY25 didn't get filled until much later in the year. And that also made a difference. That was distributed across a number of different departments. And so that for next year, you know, we've had this conversation somewhat extensively with council about really making sure that by the time we get to the end of the budgeting process, everything is really in place for us to execute immediately on that. So, you know, that should not be a factor this next year, and that will improve that vacancy outlook.
Thank you. Vicky, quick question. The class, you said that the savings, well, it's for Brittany or Vicky, the savings due to vacancies is about, for police and fire is about 4 million in the current year?
That is, that's our projected, and that's total
Projected.
across all departments, not just
Oh.
police.
Okay, is that net of overtime for police and fire?
That's the whole spending category of salaries and benefits.
Okay, so the savings on unfilled positions is then reduced by overtime that the current staff are working?
That's all, yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And this year, actually, so let's look at FY26. The FY26 year is the third year of the CBA with the police and fire union. Am I correct on that, or second?
Yeah, we're we will be in negotiations next year.
So correct, 27 will have a new.
Correct.
Okay, so
agreement.
FY26, the budget that we're looking at is the third year of the CBA?
Second year.
Second year of a 2 year.
agreement.
Thank you, Jake. Sorry, second year of a 2 year. I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Please proceed. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then since we brought up that topic, I also just wanted to add that that savings that we're seeing or we're projecting for FY25 is just to keep in mind, you know, since that is vacancy related and that's not our intention and hope going forward, that does change, you know, the amounts that go into fund balances each year. So it's a little bit of a unique situation. All right, can we keep going, Kat? Okay, and I'm not going to go through all the next few slides on council priorities. You can certainly read them all. This was just to call out what was included in the FY26 budget that was mentioned by council as something that they would like to see. And there are just a variety of different things between sidewalk maintenance, support for council, economic development, pedestrian infrastructure, just, you know, brought up in the CIP. Variety of programs and support for vulnerable citizens. Here is a highlight of the positions that were added in FY26. And Kat, you can kind of go through the next couple of slides. I'm not going to go through all the individual departments. Again, you can certainly read them, or if you have specific questions on the departments, you can keep going. Sorry. Okay, go back. Sorry.
Your pension. Yeah.
Okay, and the pension cost, this is just a comparison of FY25 to 26. And these were based on actuarial studies. Okay, now our parking fund. Here's a nice little chart of revenue versus expenses over the last 5 years in our parking fund. Next, transportation fund. So here's a highlight timeline summary for you of what's going on in transportation and parking. So for FY26, there's a $4 million transfer from the parking fund balance to budget that fund. Within that fund, there's a transfer to transportation fund.
And as this body knows, you know, that's a conversation that we've been in for a little while. So, you know, that's obviously something that we, you know, are paying attention to. I'm sorry, Mr. Rubino, I see your hand.
Oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Didn't mean to
I just had a quick question going back to the positions and the vacancies, and I don't need a long discussion. I'm just kind of curious. You'll allocate like full-time equivalents or positions and track that as a resource, or not? And if that's all we can do offline, if there's more discussion, I'm just kind of curious.
So yes and no. One of the features, I suppose, of the city's, the way the city personnel system works is that all civil servants are full-time employees. So that particular category is always the same as an FTE look. If you just simply look at the number of positions, that is an FTE just by definition, because those are all full-time folks. For the other categories where those are part-time, seasonal, we have not tended to present that in FTE terms. I don't know, Jake, if you want to jump in kind of from a historical perspective, but certainly, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Vicky. If you look at page 32 of the budget book, there is a staffing summary position count that might be interesting to you that does show FTEs.
I don't think the commission has that.
What?
I sent that out at the beginning and back in April.
And it's also available online on the city's website. It's one of the first things you see on the city website under the government tab is the city budget.
Okay, we'll move on from there.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take a look at that and just follow it. I'm just kind of curious as to how that works.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, Brittany.
Whoops. I had
Oh,
a quick
Patrick has it.
question.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I think it was on the slide before this, it had the revenues for the parking. And 2024 was really high. I was wondering, it was a bar chart, I think, revenues versus expenses. I was wondering why that was so high in 2024 and then went back down.
Yeah, so
Yes, that one.
that one. The reason for that is has to do with the technical, how the agreement over Hillman Garage shows up, right? So you're familiar with the waterfall payment that the city gets from not just Hillman, but that whole parking district, which includes Hillman. That in the course of the building of Hillman, there was money set aside for contingency. Since that project has concluded, any monies that were left there got returned to the city. That's what that is. It's a one-time infusion of funds back in, but from that particular source. So that you are correct. It is a one-time. It's not recurring, and the rest of the line is, much steadier.
Can I
Vicky,
add,
go ahead.
can I just add to that it was the closing of the trust funds. Once the construction was done and the funds were closed, there was a one-time contribution to that fund based on those closing of those trusts. And then also ARPA funds.
Thanks. Outside of the retainage payment, how are the actuals tracking to the projecteds from the waterfall?
It's been successful as a general statement in the FY26 budget. We're seeing, or we're the net of the debt service with the revenue coming in is that $1 million mark that we were anticipating.
And we have been running slightly ahead of projections. So that's, as Brittany says, that's been a successful project financially.
Yes, thanks. So I know when the PPP started, the questions were, are the revenue distributions, they seemed, I guess they were a little aggressive initially, but now it seems to be picking up. Is that right?
Yeah, obviously, so we have remained above the initial projections.
Oh, good.
There is always a bit of a trade-off between usability in some sense, because the garage serves several purposes. Obviously, there's a financial component to that, but it's also there to be a resource for the city, encourage people to easily visit the downtown and do their business there and patronize those stores and all the rest of that. Certainly the city has had some criticism about how easy Hillman is to use and some things like that. Some of those trade-offs may end up affecting what that bottom line looks like, but we are running ahead of projections. And so there is a little bit of room for us to have some conversations about what that looks like. That is a good position for us to be in. I'm so sorry, Brittany.
No, I was just going to add that we've been very fortunate to have that as a revenue stream in light of the parking fund and transportation fund situation. I think the major point that I want to make is that the using of the fund balance, that the fund balance is at the level that it has been at due to those ARPA funds supporting, and also the one-time transfer of closing of the trust fund. So that fund balance is that we've been able to use to supplement is not going to be there in the future. So I don't think there's an issue with the revenue stream that we're currently seeing. I think the revenue is, state grants are going to stay the way they are, our successful waterfall. It's not a question of whether the waterfall has been a success, but whether it's not sustainable for us to use at the level of the fund balance that we're using. And if we continue, Kat, can you go to the next chart? This will give a better breakdown. Next. This one. So this shows you the types of revenue by year. And you'll see the green in FY24, those were those non-reoccurring grants.
Thank you. This is very helpful.
Yes. So in 26, obviously we don't have those. We'll see the state grants in yellow are very steady despite our increasing cost. And that's not just us. That's just the state.
So again, just to reiterate, what you're seeing in 26 is a utilization of prior fund balance just to balance the transportation fund.
That's accurate. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on this, or you can keep going? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. And then next is just our enterprise funds. And I'm sure Alderman Arnett will want to speak on this because I know he likes this slide. So overall, there is an increase, and this was all based on Santec's presentation and their suggestions and recommendations. There's an increase of rates in the sewer, watershed, and solid waste. And combined, we're looking at about a 7% increase in a quarterly bill for residents on average. You can see the breakdown, 15% is from the watershed. And again, this is all from the Santec recommended rates.
So I can't find my hand.
There you go. Go ahead, Ross.
Yes. So there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, the increases that Santec recommends to us are pretty much basically increases in the cost of doing business. The one exception is in the watershed restoration, where we, as a city, are aggressively trying to increase our tree canopy, actually bring it back to what it used to be. And so I think it's like 36% of that particular fund has to do with forestation. But I think there's some underlying things, and I have to express my appreciation to discussion with the finance director and the budget manager. I think it's time for these and many other things that we look under the hood and understand what we're buying and what the costs are, and whether we're being really efficient in managing the city. We basically continue to do things as we've always done them, and we've been successful as a city doing that so far. If we had the out year look from the spending affordability forecast, I would love to see what they're thinking about the economy in the coming years. But I don't know that we can continue much longer, nor should we as good stewards, just more or less accepting business as usual. And so I think one of the things for the next council, which I will not be on, to dig into with the administration is looking at exactly what it is we're doing and why we're spending what we're spending on it. But this is going to be a hefty increase in fees, particularly for people that are at lower incomes and fixed incomes. But when I look at it, if we continue to do what we're doing, this is what it costs. We don't have a choice. These are the costs of inputs.
Thanks. Is that watershed restoration, is that a quarterly number there, the 3545?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So that in effect goes to about 142 a year. All right, please continue. Thank you. Oh, any questions from the commission? No, sorry, go ahead.
Great. Kat, keep going, please. You can skip over this one. We already spoke on all of these, so you can keep going. And then this is just a budget timeline of what's left. We're getting in the home stretch, so.
Oh.
And this is just the budget team giving Jody a shout out for all of her hard work and dedication.
Yes.
And that is all we have.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Peter. Has a question.
Thanks, Kat.
Morning, everyone. Hi. Going to the beginning of the presentation, I'm sorry, I'm going all the way back. I think you're on the increase in contractual services from FY24 right at FY25 to FY26. I think the increase of about $2.5 million, 20%. Just curious, because I kind of see that in various departments, but where is that increase coming from?
Jake, I was going to say you might want to chime in, but that kind of, there's a variety of things. There's some of it is within the CIP projects that we're seeing and the need for contractual services to facilitate some of those projects. And then also a point to make on the vacancies is some of the departments are looking inward at, if we can't fill these vacancies, how can we help with contractual services to get us over that hump until we are in a better place?
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Any other questions, Pete, before we go?
Not for me.
Okay.
Councilman, thank you.
Brittany, you had an early part of the slide where you said we need to diversify our revenue. Can you talk about where you think that the opportunities lie in diversification?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. It's a struggle, I think, with local government in general. Unfortunately, the nature of the size of our jurisdiction, and just the limited limited types of revenue that we are privy to. As you know, we don't get the sales tax that the state gets. It's just more of a conversation point of we need to be careful since a large portion of our revenue is one-sided stream, and what we can and can't control of those other revenue streams, whether it's, I would typically say, grants are a good thing to look at, grants and CIP projects, grants and at all levels. However, in light of the way that the economy is now, that's not exactly somewhere that you can look. I think it's just more of a topic of conversation, of what additional revenue streams can we look at, or do we have control over? We don't have any control over the income that we receive, in terms of the base or the percentage. And so it's just it's a challenge having that large portion of your revenue being one-sided.
And I'll jump in briefly. Jake, did you have anything you want to add before I jump in? Okay. The other thing I'll say is that obviously, you know, income tax and property tax in particular, they're a big proportion, and you know, the city's unlikely to find a funding source that that would equal those. But I'm also not sure that that's necessarily the goal either. I think it's the question of diversification is that, you know, any amount of that it has some insulating effects for the city, right? And so the state has looked at a number of pieces of legislation that would allow local jurisdictions to do some different things, whether that's, you know, expanding use of red light cameras or speed cameras, you know, some various things like that. Or on the expenditure side, you know, state has looked at various pieces of legislation, not all have passed, that would make it easier to, for example, they had looked at a piece of legislation that would have allowed non-sworn officers to review red light tickets, right, and sign off on those, that would help. Like, all of those little things help. And so I think that to Brittany's point earlier about and Jake's point about diversification, I think all of that kind of stuff helps, and just the city staying open to what are the possibilities that are out there, and how can we spread, how can we widen the range of things that we're looking at.
Thank you. Kat, can you go back to the revenue slide? It was early on in the deck.
Was that the revenue assumptions?
There was a chart that had I guess, was it around maybe it was 8 or 9? I don't remember early on. One before this, I think. Revenue assumptions. And there was a chart, maybe go one earlier. Sorry, I'm not seeing it. I think it was earlier in the deck.
Is it this revenue analysis? I
Yeah,
think
that's going to be my second question. My first question was on the overall budgeted revenues for FY26. Brittany, could you help us with what percentage of that is that's the general fund expenditures. Was there a revenue one similar to this?
I don't believe so.
Oh.
Would you like me to leave it on the screen?
Okay, let's go to here. Let's go to here. In terms of the revenue projections for FY26, what percentage of this is recurring and what percentage of this is one-time revenue, be it grant money or, well, there's no ARPA funds, but other one-time revenue sources that are included in the FY26 budget that are being used to offset recurring expenses?
Recurring revenue is offsetting reoccurring expenses. We have, if you I can pull up how much of one-time funds that we have programs. If you go to the next, that fund balance slide. One more, I think, Kat. Actually, I think you. if you
The
back-
expenditures?
No, it's fund balance summary. I think it's back up a little bit. But there you go.
Okay.
So, Jim, you can see here, if you see a sign for one-time uses, we've got 3 million programmed for 26. Out of that, the most conservative way to look at this is that projected FY25 fund balance, which is 4.5. So 3 million of one-time for
Got it.
one-time expenditures.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Jake. So the 114,975, call it 115 million, that FY26 revenue projection. There's very little in terms of one-time revenue included in that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as far as the grants are concerned, the city does get a number of grants that I would not call one-time money. I wouldn't characterize them that way. Some of that is formula grants. Transportation is a good example, right? That money comes in year in, year out. So I don't think it's necessarily just categorizing grants in general as a one-time. I'm not sure is really some of them are, but there are a lot of them that are not. They're recurring, and we'd have a whole different conversation if those, if those got seriously interrupted, but there's no particular, that scenario is not in front of us at this point.
I was
Thanks,
just going to add that just on the grants piece, yes, there are grants included in that number. However, like Vicky said, it kind of depends on the grant. There are a number of grants that police might be different, where some of that grant money does support operations. But again, it's not one time, it's not guaranteed, but it's not one time. And then there are a variety of grants that are program driven that the program expenditures would also not be there without the match of the revenue.
Got it. Thanks. Pete, you had a question? Go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. Just for my own knowledge, because I'm not familiar. For City Dock, why is there a revenue decrease? Is that docking fees, or is that something else?
Correct. Docking fees.
Okay. All right.
All right. I had a question, Brittany, on the income tax transfer from the state and the line graph that you had earlier.
Jim, before you go on, let me just.
Sorry, go ahead, Ross.
To the committee that if you'd like, in the budget book itself, when you get it, if you look at page 15, you're going to see a lot more detail in these expenditures plus other expenditure items. As Brittany and Jake know, that's my very favorite page, but there is a wealth of information there that gets under the hood and lets you see what's going on.
Thank you. Brittany, do we get, does the city get reports from the state on what the projected income tax revenue will be?
Absolutely not. They are not helpful, not forthcoming. It's kind of like, here's what you get, take it or leave it.
And be grateful and say thank you.
We have absolutely, it's actually very challenging to try to estimate that revenue stream, and very challenging in that it's a large revenue stream for us with little detail. And the city is very unique. We can't always look at Anne Arundel County. We can't look at the state. We have to use our best judgment and our professional opinion. But no, in short, no, the state is not helpful whatsoever.
And I'll add to that just looking at this chart, what you notice is that the deviation from sort of a straight line projection has gotten larger in these last few years. And for a long time, it was sort of, you're up a year, you're down a year, you're up a year, you're down a year. And then that completely went out the window in the last few years. So it's further away from trend, and we lost that up a year, down a year pattern as well. And I think all of that makes it particularly challenging to do an estimate, which is why finance tends to estimate this reasonably conservatively.
Go ahead, Ross.
Just one little add is that might be a little bit more granular than you're looking for, but the capital gains are something that definitely fluctuated in those prior years, and we're not seeing those as much in the forward years. So it's a conservative approach, but it's what we can do based on our actuals.
Got it. Thanks. Ross, go ahead.
So I think there's another phenomena that I'm starting to notice with people in the city that I eat lunch with and go to the club with, and that is there's a significant number of people that are changing their home state to another state and are migrating. And these are big income people with big returns. They may be a small percent of the pot, but I am worried about the overall economic climate, but also the climate in the city with the combination of the city and the county tax rates. So again, I think that's something that maybe we can get real estate analysts to help us with, but if it continues, it could be a significant drag on our income tax revenue.
Just, I'd like to see, I was just going to say, I'd like to see the stats on that. I think we hear about the phenomenon that Alderman Arnett is describing a lot, but I know one statistic about people leaving Maryland is that 2/3 of the out-migration is people who are 18 to 35, not people who are necessarily at the top of their earning potential. So I think
Thank you.
I take
Thank you,
point.
Alderman Huntley. Thank you, Alderman Huntley, and thank you for joining us.
But they're not taking much money with them, Harry.
Right, that's exactly my point, Russ. Like those, I'd like to get the exact data on to what extent what you're describing really is a phenomenon versus to what extent it's just kind of what we hear about.
You would think that.
I'm sorry. I will say that Alderman Arnett, you do make a valid point. The state has mentioned that to us, specific to Annapolis and the exiting of some of our large property value owners, but not to be doom and gloom. So you're onto something.
Thank you. You would think that the state would be ahead of that because it affects state income tax revenues.
Yes.
Instead of us worrying about it.
You would think
that we wouldn't have to lead the charge on income tax revenue projections and high income earners departing the state. You'd think that the state would be ahead. Sorry, Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I was just wondering, I mean, this is a state level view, but do we have the same figures for Anne Arundel County and for the city where we could plot it all on one graph and see it and see the trends for all of those?
This is actually our view. This is the city's view.
Oh, these are city dollars and thousands.
These are there's a quarterly, am I right? Is a quarterly distribution, Jake, that the state makes to the city for income tax?
Roughly? I think I get reports monthly.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
I could be confusing with the real estate. I'll have to take a look.
No, I think you're right. That's what John Hammond told me the other day.
Trust. All right.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm just trying to acclimate myself to the information and the data.
But Peter, you were asking for an overlay showing the same curve for the county and the state also, which I think would be a good thing to see.
Yeah, when I saw it, that when when Vicky said, there's not much of a correlation, and I just, I kind of like to visually represent that and see that. And if there's a big dip, and this is the city's dip from 2024 to 2025, do we have the ability to break that down demographically by median income or by age at all from our own tax rolls or tax dollars or information that we could get from the state?
Not that we get from the reports that we typically see from them, but a nod to Ross. Maybe this is something that the spending affordability could do.
Thank
I was
you.
gonna say, if anyone has a
Very,
state
very
contact,
true.
let us know.
Very true. Now, that would be one of the key tasks that a consultant, an economic consultant, would be tasked with. Thank you. All right, any questions from commission members? Brittany, thank you. Vicky, thank you. Is there anything in the current budget that you haven't indicated on your slides that concerns you with regards to either the revenue or the expense side in the proposed budget?
Is that a question to me or the members?
A question to you or Vicky, either one.
We're Harry.
I would say proceed with caution. I think that I would hope that there's a hard look at the debt. We do have included in our budget the anticipation of issuing bonds in the fall. I think debt service levels are something to really consider in the out years, as well as the growing CIP and capital budget. I also think it's important to look at the reserve balances and the unassigned, but also the budget stabilization fund. And that is maintained at a level that's in align with the policy, the fiscal policy. But if you look at it as a whole, $3 million-ish is a small portion of our annual general fund expenditures. So not so much a worry, but just a point to consider.
Thanks. When you talk about debt service for the FY26 budget, what is the percentage of debt service as of the total general fund expenditures?
I think it's $9 million out of $122 million. So what's that? Somewhere around 7%, right?
Is that an increase? Is that an increase from the current year budget?
No, that's actually a decrease. We have not issued debt since 2022. So our debt service is slowly declining right now. However, in 27, there will be a large increase should we issue the bonds as they're proposed right now.
And this, just in general, is one of the things that I think finance has done really, really well over the years. Has been, they don't, even though the budget gives the authority to issue bonds for particular projects, finance tries to do it's not quite just in time, but that kind of idea, what do we realistically think we need for this particular year? And so there's authority that has been unexercised, which has kept the city's borrowing costs down, right? And I feel like finance has been really good at gauging that.
What is our current blended interest rate on outstanding debt since our borrowing costs are down?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can definitely send it to you. And then we also have a debt capacity presentation that was presented by Davenport that Alderman Arnett might want to share or speak on?
In previous years, Davenport has presented to the Financial Advisory Commission as part of their monthly meetings. I would encourage that upcoming.
If I can just jump in on that,
Thank you, Alderman.
as I understand, that was an oversight that when the Finance Committee got its presentation from Davenport, the FAC was supposed to be invited, and there was just a miscommunication, and that didn't happen. But yes, completely agree that when we get that presentation, it should be to both the Finance Committee and the FAC.
Thank you. And this way we can direct our questions to those who can answer them.
And I understand there's a new, much more fulsome report that I haven't seen yet, but I think the FAC should also get. The report we got was just 5 pages long, and it was, to my taste, fairly superficial. I'd really like to get into some of the questions you're asking, Jim, about the composition of our outstanding general obligation bonds and the interest rates for them. And those are things we used to see in the past.
I will also say that the FY24 audit, the financial statements are a very good resource, and they're and the footnotes for debt will give you a lot of information. And I will be happy to share the new updated Davenport debt capacity report per se that they have, and it does include those scenarios that the council had suggested or would have liked to see. So I can share that with council and then also forward it over to you all.
Thank you. Reports are good for the commission, but the opportunity to dialogue with Davenport is also very helpful.
You had asked Jim earlier about concerns.
Yes, thank you, Becky.
And so obviously the other thing that is happening in our area is all the changes at the federal level and with federal employment. And we obviously haven't seen that entirely shake out yet. So, you know, I think that's something for us in general to keep an eye on. On the one hand, the city may really benefit from that in terms of being able to pick up some really talented folks that might not have otherwise been on the job market. But obviously that has a lot of implications for people's day-to-day lives and their feelings of stability and income tax revenue and the like. So, you know, that's something obviously we and all the jurisdictions in this area and anywhere that has a decent federal presence, which goes a lot wider than just the DC metro area. It's something we'll all have to keep an eye on.
Thank you. Alderman Heinley?
Yeah, just to tack on to what the acting city manager said, this is anecdotal, and I would love to get the actual data. But I can tell you in my neighborhood, there are way more for sale signs and up for way longer than I have seen in the whole time I've lived in Annapolis. And so that will not affect us this year. It will not affect us next year, but it could potentially have a really big impact when our property assessments get reevaluated in FY28. And it gives me a lot of pause. To give you a more discrete thing that I have, it's relatively small, but it does worry me a little bit. We have $2 million of administrative expenses accounted for as revenue. And as I understand, and I hope the finance director will correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand, that is expectations of reimbursements from our enterprise funds as capital projects are completed. And over the past couple of years, we have not been able to get capital projects completed at the rate that I think we'd all like them to. So I'm a little bit, I think that could maybe be a little bit optimistic, but at the end of the day, it's not a gigantic revenue source.
Sorry, thank you.
And
Jake,
just-
you wanted to add? Go ahead.
I'll just add that, so if you look at the detail of that, so let's say every single enterprise fund, it's a transfer automatically. So the part of that is capital sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Their majority of that is enterprise fund, so it's a direct transfer as soon as July 1st hits. The capital part is the reimbursement part, which Harry is right, is as we spend funds on those capital projects. So it's not all, but it is a part of it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions from commission members? Go ahead, Ross.
Ed, can you send me your contact information so we can powwow on where we are with the spending affordability? I just looked in my contacts. I don't have it.
Be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next item on the agenda is new business, and I don't have anything under new business. If any commission members have new business, we can introduce that now. Thank you. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 12th. The question of a special meeting, it looks like based on the budget timeline that's been given to us, there is no availability for additional meetings within the time frame that the city has given us now. But the next steps from here, I have circulated among the commission members a draft of last year's Financial Advisory Commission report on the FY25 budget. We will be drafting that to be delivered in the next few days. So I will circulate that to all commission members my first pass, and then I'll ask you to respond back. I would ask you to just respond directly to me, and I'll synthesize all the comments together, and then we'll get a draft out to everybody for approval and submission to the city clerk. Hearing none other items, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by Frank, seconded by Pete.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.